Great. Good morning, everyone. You guys are hardcore getting here at 9 a.m. after a night of partying, right? Well, welcome. My name's Tim Greenfield. I work for Vertigo Software, and I'm the technical lead for the Silverlight Media Framework. So I'm guessing that probably the first question that most of you have on your minds right now is, what exactly is the Microsoft Media Platform Player Framework? Well, the simplest way to answer that is that it's a new name for the Silverlight Media Framework. And we did that not just because we like long, complex names. In fact, I think if we dissect the name here, you'll understand a little bit more about why this new name makes sense. So the Microsoft Media Platform, that is essentially a suite of existing Microsoft products that help you as developers and as a business create applications that can consume, serve, and create media. So it basically has everything from end to end, from the client side all the way up to the server side, to basically allow you to create applications. And the Player Framework, that's just one part of the Microsoft Media Platform. So really the name is just Player Framework. It's just 2 words, not 3 anymore, so it's not as complex as it sounds. And so this is what we're talking about today, formerly the Silverlight Media Framework. So if you don't know what the Silverlight Media Framework is, or want a quick refresher, basically it's a video player. It's a component that you can add into your application, into your Silverlight application, to play videos very easily. It's an established player. It's been around for about 1.5 years now. It's been used in all kinds of projects, small and large. It's been used in the Sunday Night Football project. It's been used in the 2010 Winter Olympics. It was also used for the PDC conference last fall, and in fact, it was used to broadcast the keynotes here at MIX. So it's definitely been around the block. It's an open source project. You can go download it, the binaries or the source code from smf.codeplex.com. And because of this new name, that will actually change at some point, but we'll just redirect to that new URL. It's also a very feature-rich thing. So we try to make it very simple to use, but it's also very full of a lot of the things that you as developers need to do in media applications. We don't want people to have to reinvent the wheel, so we keep adding things that are very common in media applications. And here's sort of a smattering of features that we support. Smooth streaming is obviously a big one. Picture-in-picture, Windows Phone 7. We have a Windows Phone 7 version of the Player Framework. But I'd love to be able to dive into all of these different features and actually give you little demos on them and stuff, but in the interest of time, I'm going to focus on just some of the newer features that we have added over the last month. And that is advertising, health monitoring, and stereoscopic 3D. Some of these actually we just released as soon as Monday. So hopefully this is the first chance you're getting to hear about some of these. And I'm also going to then talk a little bit about the future plans for the Player Framework, and that includes HTML5 support, as well as taking advantage of some of the new Silverlight 5 features. So I think just to get started here, I'm going to do a very quick sort of Hello World demo. So if you go to Codeplex and install the setup that we have, you'll get these 2 templates in here to create an application right out of the box really quickly. So I'm going to choose the SMF Smooth Streaming template, and I'll just call that Hello World. And what we do here is we add some references to the Player Framework here, as well as the smooth streaming media element that comes with the IIS client tools. We install that setup for you as well, so you don't have to worry about that. And then what this creates for you is the player. It's just a control that sits on your form. Here you can see it above. And if we look at the XAML, just to kind of understand what's going on here, we have the SMF player object. And then we have this concept called a playlist, which is basically a collection of videos that you want to play in your application. So in this case, we have one playlist item, and the media source is the URL of the actual video. So if we just run this real quick, oops, I'm going to get an error. Installed some Windows updates last night, and it broke Visual Studio, but I have a workaround here. So. I'll probably do that more than once today. So this is just playing a smooth streaming video. Right out of the box, we have all the DVR abilities to pause and fast forward, scrub to different positions, volume control, etc. So this is just a real brief introduction to sort of what you get right out of the box. Pretty simple stuff. So let me just talk real briefly to kind of help this sink in about how we build new features. We support a plugin architecture, and we use the Managed Extensibility Framework, also known as MEF, to accomplish that. What this allows us to do is build features as separate components that you can then add to your application only if you want that feature. It's kind of neat because then your ZAP file won't get all bloated if you don't need a certain feature. And it also allows you to build your own components and plug them into our framework without having to go and mess with the source and do that kind of thing. And just to sort of demonstrate or illustrate how fundamental this architecture is, we have a concept called media plugins, which that rectangle that's actually playing the video for you, even that itself is a plugin. And we have a progressive one and a smooth streaming plugin, and you can choose which one you want. So we build a lot of our new features as plugins. And one of those new features that I mentioned, that's a plugin, is stereoscopic 3D support. So this is a pretty neat feature that we just added on Monday. And to start by sort of explaining how stereoscopic 3D actually works, there's a few different technologies to deliver the 3D video from your computer to your eyes. But before that, it's really all the same. But what you need is two different video cameras, positioned slightly apart from one another, filming the same subject. Typically, you put them about the distance apart that your eyes are, because the idea, of course, is that you want to have the left camera taking a video that's intended to be displayed only in your left eye, and the same for the right camera. So here's a couple of funny pictures I found on the internet of people that got creative for creating 3D videos that would work with our they would work with our player. That's not why they created them, probably. But so here's on the left is somebody did like a Rector set with mirrors that bounce the light around, and then this webcam that has two different lenses. So what you end up then with is a video that has a left and right eye source, and it's stitched together into the same video. And so once you have this, then you can very easily turn that into 3D using the player framework. So one of those technologies that I was mentioning that allows you to see 3D is called anaglyph. Anaglyph has come a long ways in recent years. It's been around for a long time, but they've made some improvements to it, so it's a little better than when you saw JAWS 3D back in the 80s. And just to show you how easy it is to actually turn a video into that, I will do a quick demo here. So this time I'll do a progressive download player. And I have a video already. that has information for both left and right eyes. So I'm just going to throw that in there and run it. So it won't do anything but display the video. Oh, there I'm doing it again. So here's our video. They look like the same picture, but they're actually slightly different. So to turn that into 3D now, what we're going to do is, like I mentioned how plugins work, we just add a reference to this new plugin that ships with the player framework. It's called Microsoft.silverlight.mediaframework.plugins.anaglyph3D. Sorry if that's kind of hard to see. I can't zoom in, though. So I'll just add that reference. And then we need to do one more thing. We need to tell our player that tell our player a little bit about that video, because there are some different ways to actually show 3D videos. So I'm just going to paste some code just to kind of cheat here. Okay, so there's a new property called S3D properties. Let's see if I can zoom in that a little bit for you. And what you do is you set it to an object that has some other properties. It tells us that the source is side by side. You could do top and bottom. It also tells us that the left frame is for the left eye, could be reversed. And if you notice, that video was a little squished horizontally, so we need to adjust that by setting an aspect ratio for the two frames. And I will just run that now, and what we should see, put on my 3D glasses. Yep, 3D. So you can't see it. I can, though. I've got the glasses. It is cheating. You'll get a chance in a minute. Okay, so that's how easy it is to turn it into Anaglyph-supported 3D. We support red and cyan. There's also an option to turn it into, to basically take the image and turn it into grayscale before we apply the red and cyan filters to that, and that makes it a little bit easier on your eyes because it reduces some of the color loss or color distortion created from that. The advantage of Anaglyph is that there's no special hardware required. You can do it on any monitor, any computer, and the glasses themselves, you know, this is like 40 cents. So very cheap. Anyone can do it. The disadvantage, of course, is that if you've tried this before, it's not the best quality. You know, there's some you notice the color difference between the left and right eye. And that leads us to another technology that we worked with NVIDIA to support. And there's a plugin that you can download from the NVIDIA website today that will allow you to support their NVIDIA 3D Vision active shutter glasses. So this is really cool stuff. I was just blown away when I first tried this. So to explain the way this works, essentially you have the exact same video with both the left and right eye, but instead of, like, the Anaglyph will merge those two. Instead, what the NVIDIA technology will do is it'll play the left frame for 120th of a second, and then it'll play the right frame for 120th of a second, and it keeps alternating that. And the glasses, these are special glasses, they will actually dim out one of your eyes. So while you have them on, it'll dim out your right eye while it's playing the frame for your left eye. And then it will, 120th of a second later, dim out your left eye while it's playing the frame for the right eye. And so what you end up with is each eye seeing only the frame intended for it, and it has the effect of 60 frames per second per eye, and great 3D quality 3D. It's just really neat stuff. So a couple notes about this technology. It does, well, the advantage is that it's awesome. The disadvantage is that it does require some special hardware. So you need these glasses and a transmitter that can talk to it. And that's about $150 retail, so you can probably get them for a little less. As well, you need a 120 hertz monitor. And these monitors, many newer monitors today actually are 120 hertz already. So you might already have this. They're starting to become more common. And you also need an NVIDIA 3D Vision ready graphics card. And these cards are also becoming more common. I actually bought sort of like a mid-level gaming graphics card about a year ago, and it supports the 3D Vision technology. So you might already have everything but the glasses. And it's pretty neat stuff. And I would love to actually give you guys all glasses right now and show it to you, but it's not exactly practical. So what we've done is hopefully the next best thing. We got NVIDIA to graciously donate or lend us some hardware here. And then afterwards, I would invite you up to go and check it out if you're interested. So, and you can compare the anaglyph and the NVIDIA technology. So just in case you're wondering, these are not the same. Neither of these are the technology that's used in the movie theater when you watch like Avatar. That's called passive polarized. It's something we do not support. And we don't support it not because it's so difficult to support or something. It's simply that it requires some special hardware that most consumers just don't have. So we could build it, but then nobody would really be able to use it. So that's something we don't support. So I've got, this is kind of a neat demo. I hope you enjoy this. This does not involve Visual Studio. I built this, where is it? So remember I was talking about the media plugin is the rectangle that plays the video? Well, I created my own media plugin that takes information from a webcam and pipes it into the player framework. And I've got these, I don't know if you can see these up here, two identical webcams that I've just mounted together. Just, they're like $20 a piece. And so I've got this app now that helps me. First I need to choose which one is the left eye, so that looks right. Do that. So this is my two webcams showing up in the player framework. And now, just like we did before, I just need to enable our 3D plugin. And now I have live 3D. Yeah, somebody wave your hands back there. Nice. So it works, and it works with the NVIDIA plugin too. It's pretty cool stuff. It's just for fun, but I thought you guys would enjoy it. So. All right, so let's talk about another new feature that we have. It's obviously important to make money with your video applications, and so we now support standards-based advertising in the Silverlight Media Framework or Player Framework as of Monday. And this work was actually started by Akamai, and we've taken that work and sort of used that as a launch pad, and we're and so credit to them for getting this started. So what we have here basically now is the ability for you to do everything you need to easily monetize your apps. It's done. It's out of the box. You can plug in with existing ad servers and start making money. So just before I get into this, a couple quick definitions. A linear ad, that is basically like a commercial. Your video stops, the linear ad plays, and then when the ad's done, your video resumes. There's also something called a companion ad, and those are ads that live outside of the player framework and somewhere in your application. That can be in the Silverlight application or in your HTML. There's also a concept called nonlinear ads. Those are also known as overlay ads, and they're basically ads that show up in your video area, but they don't cause your main video to stop or pause while they're playing. They just kind of go on top of it. Usually they're interactive as well, but they don't have to be. Great. So some of the standards that help support this, that we support. The very first thing you need to do when playing an ad is you need to determine when to play that ad. So we don't worry about what ad to play just yet. We figure out when we want to play these ads. There's a standard out there for that. It's called MAST. And it's basically an XML schema. So you can define the rules for when to play these ads in an XML file. The player framework then consumes that and actually causes them to play. A couple key points about MAST. Again, it doesn't define what ad to play. That's actually the job of another standard called VAST, which I'll talk about in a minute. But it just points to a URL. Typically, that URL is going to be your ad server's URL, and that ad server is going to return a VAST XML file to you. So MAST just says, hey, here's a URL. You go figure it out. And then it also supports complex conditions. So it's kind of, you can get really creative with your conditions for when to trigger these ads. We actually support a total of 13 different events and 21 different properties that you can look at and to determine when you want to actually cause these ads to occur. You can also combine multiple conditions to do and or operators between them, and I'll show you an example, or I'll show you some of these conditions in a minute. And so you could actually do something really creative. Instead of just saying like play at 20 seconds, you could say play an ad between 20 and 25 seconds, but only if you're on mute. Something really interesting like that. And MAST also supports something we call targets, and that helps determine where to play these ads. It's not particularly useful for linear ads because they play inside the main video area, but it is for companion ads because we don't really know where you want those companion ads to play. So MAST helps provide a little more information to help us deal with that, the placement scenario. Cool. So I'm going to now jump back into Visual Studio. Okay. And I'll create a new project, Smooth Streaming. We'll call it Ads. And what I'm going to do is grab a couple of pre-made MAST and VAST files, and I'm just going to throw them in my project here. And of course, like the stereoscopic 3D plugin, we need to add a reference to the new advertising plugin. So we jump down here, and there's a new plugins.advertising that you just add to your project. And we need to do one more thing. We need to hook up the MAST file so we know about, we need to know the location of that MAST file. And I'm going to kind of be going through some of this stuff fast. There's a lot to all of these advertising standards. So I can't get into all the details here, but basically we add we set this property here, and that points to our mast.xml file. So if we jump in then to the mast.xml file, again, this is going to tell us when to play these ads. What we see is a couple of different triggers. We have one trigger per ad that we want to play. We've got one for a pre-roll. That's an ad that's going to play at the very beginning. That has a condition here. I should probably zoom in a little for you. And this is set to basically monitor an event of on-item start. So that's when the playlist item starts. We want to trigger this ad. If we jump down to the mid-roll, we can see it's looking at a property called position, and that needs to be greater than or equal to 30 seconds. So that ad's going to play any point after 30 seconds into your main video. And we've also then, if we kind of scroll down, and I'll pick out some highlights here, there's the source. And again, that points to most likely a VAST file. We tell it what format here, VAST, and we point to that VAST XML file that would normally be on your actual ad server. And that's really all there is to it to get ads scheduled. So the next thing then, of course, is what ad to actually play. So before I run that demo, let's talk briefly about VAST. So VAST is an IAB recommended format. It's served by a majority of the ad servers today. So it makes it very easy for you to just sign up for an ad account and get a URL and start retrieving VAST files. It's an XML file, like I said, and we'll look at that in a minute. A couple key points about it. VAST supports multiple ad creatives, so you can actually define a linear ad and companion ads sort of in the same VAST file. It makes it nice to group them. It also supports a concept we call ad pods, which is the ability, it's kind of like a commercial break. So you can actually have multiple ads from multiple advertisers in the same VAST file, and they'll play one after another. And of course, then the most important part about VAST is tracking, because if you don't track what's going on, you're not going to get your check. So VAST supports a whole bunch of different tracking events to communicate back with your ad server and tell it what's going on. There's actually, I think, like 16 different events. Obviously, the most important are the impression and the click, but there's all kinds of other events that the ad server might want to know about. So now let's jump back to that demo. We'll take a look at that VAST file that we were pointing to. And here we have a linear ad and a couple of companion ads. So if we look at the linear ad, it tells us that it's going to be 30 seconds long. It has a bunch of tracking information here. It tells us something about what happens when you click on that ad. And it tells us actually what ad to play with these media files. And there's a good reason why there's not just one media file in here. We want to be able to pick the best file to show the user. And we want to potentially have multiple choices here. So an advertiser might create a version of their ad in smooth streaming and another in progressive. And then depending on whether or not the player supports smooth streaming, it would choose the smooth streaming one because that would be preferable. So we have an algorithm to help choose the best one. For the user, we take a look at the type, obviously, if it's progressive or streaming. The bit rate is actually involved in choosing which media file to play, the resolution, and of course the type. And you could have multiple types, like you could have an image, in fact, as like a fallback in case you didn't support any of the video types. So that is VAST in a nutshell. And if we run it, and this time I'm learning, so I'm not going to get that error. So if we run our example, there's our pre-roll ad. And you can see the video actually stopped. And as soon as that's finished, then the video will resume. And one interesting thing, the volume can actually control the ad. So it's talking, and I'll talk about how that works in a minute. But there's ways we can communicate with the ad player itself. So our video resumes, or starts really in this case. And then remember, anytime after 30 seconds, it's going to play that mid-roll. So let's just jump past 30 seconds, and there is an example of a nonlinear ad displaying in the bottom there. Great. So now let's just wire up companion ads real quick. Again, I'm going to cheat and just copy in a big chunk of code so it goes a little faster. Because we had two companion ads in that VAST file, but neither actually displayed. And the reason for that is that we didn't tell it anything about where to put a companion ad. So what we have here is, let's make this a little bit larger so we can actually see what's going on. We have the player on the left, and then we have two containers here. one on the top, one right there. And those are where our companion ads are going to play. We wire them up by giving them, here's the grids that they will be contained in. We wire them up by giving them a name. And we set this funny-looking attach property to sort of tell the player framework about these containers. And then if we look in the mast file, what we can find is, where is that? Find information about these targets. So basically what this is saying is that there's some piece of our ad that's called raw banner 300 by 60, and we want that piece to go into this region. That region happens to be the name of the container, the name of the grid that we saw there in XAML. Same thing with this. So if we jump back then to the vast part, we see that those companion ads had indeed those IDs. So the bottom line is that now it's wired up. Mast helps tell us, oh, I'm not learning. Mast helps tell us about where to map the part of the vast ad to the container that it should exist in. So that is now companion ads working. Great. So one last standard. It's called vpaid. vpaid is also an IAB recommended standard. And it's not an XML file like vast and mast. It's actually an object-oriented terms and interface. And what vpaid does is it tells us how to play each of those different types of ads. So we might have an ad that's an image, one that's a smooth streaming video, one that's a progressive video, one that's a flash file. So we need a different vpaid plugin that's basically responsible for playing each of those types of ads. And so you can create your own vpaid plugins that can play any kind of ad you want. Out of the box, we support images, videos, both smooth streaming and progressive. We also support Silverlight ads, which is really cool because you can create some very rich and interactive ads using Silverlight, and they play natively inside of the player framework. We also support HTML-based ads that can be an iframe or just sort of an injection of HTML or an HTML image. So all those are supported out of the box. We also have a proof of concept for a Flash-based vpaid plugin. So you could actually play Flash ads on top of your Silverlight app. That is included with the source code that if you go download the source code for the player framework. So I have just sort of another fun demo of something I built using a Silverlight ad. I have this game I wrote called Puzzle Touch that is a jigsaw puzzle game. And so I just sort of took that game and tossed it into a zap file and pointed my vast file at this zap file. And so here I am playing this puzzle. And if I complete it before 30 seconds, then I can start my video. Otherwise, in 30 seconds, it'll automatically start. So it looks like I'm going to win. And there's the puzzle finishing. Now your video starts playing. So there's an example of a very rich, interactive ad that should engage users and get them to recognize your brand and be more apt to click on it and buy your product. So I think that's a really powerful feature. I hope people take advantage of it. All right, so let's talk about another new feature, health monitoring. So it's important to be able to know what kind of quality experience your users are having with your application. It's also important to be able to troubleshoot issues that arise. So we have both now a new plugin and a new tool that work together to help basically provide that kind of information. So you can actually, we host the tool on smf.cloudapp.net/healthmonitor, not Codeplex. The source code is included on Codeplex, but there's a hosted version of this tool here. And I'm going to run a local copy of that so you can see how that actually works. So here we've got a video. If we play this, we can start to see some information about that video playing. We've got bitrate, CPU load, let me turn down the volume for you there. Frames per second, buffering information. It's also got logs that are generated, quality snapshot up here, and some low-level trace logs that come from the smooth streaming media element itself. So that can be really useful for actually troubleshooting problems that are coming up. You can have the user send you a snapshot of that trace log, or of those trace logs. And so that's all nice and fine for actually testing your video. But what if you want to test your app instead of just testing your video? So what we can do is back in Visual Studio, we'll create a new project. And all we have to do is add some references, some plugins to the player framework. So they are diagnostics, logging, local connection, and monitoring. And this, obviously, all this is documented well, so you don't have to memorize what these assemblies are. But you just add these assemblies to your project, and automatically, when you play your video now, we're going to be tracking on background threads so it doesn't interfere with performance, all these metrics about your playback experience. And we're aggregating them and taking samples. Now, we're not doing anything with them yet, so that's where the health monitor tool comes back in. So let's fire that up real quick. And we use, I don't know if you're familiar with the Silverlight local messaging technology. This is really cool stuff. 2 separate Silverlight apps running in 2 separate browsers can talk to each other. So we use this technology, so here's our video, to send that information over to the tool. And there's our information from the video playing in the other browser. We get all the same information there. So this is pretty useful because you could just throw this in your app. If a problem arises, you could have your user go to this tool and start collecting information so you can troubleshoot the issue. Okay, so the fun doesn't stop there. There's another piece to this that's coming up. So we've got the player framework talking to the monitoring plugin. The monitoring plugin then talks to another plugin. So what I just showed you was the local connection one. It passes this information to the local connection plugin. That then passes it through Silverlight local messaging onto the tool. Now, you could write your own plugin to basically pull that same data and do whatever you want with it. And there's another part of, so Microsoft Media Platform is a suite of products, right? There's another piece, if you notice on that diagram back in the beginning, called Audience Insight. And that is a new thing that's coming out. And I don't want to spoil it too much because Eric Schmidt is actually going to be talking about the MMP Audience Insight part of the platform in this room right after this session. So actually, I would highly recommend staying to check that out. But basically, what this does is it allows you to send that same data to this Audience Insight plugin. That sends it up to the cloud where this very powerful service exists to give you a window into what's happening inside of your video playback experience across all your users. So you can start to see trends and make intelligent decisions about things. And so, like I said, that's all I'm going to say about that now because Eric Schmidt's going to talk about that in the next session. But that all kind of plays into this, and it starts to make sense why this is all coming together as part of the same Microsoft Media Platform. Great. So Silverlight 5, this is some stuff we're going to be doing. Silverlight 5 has some improvements related to video, as you probably heard in the keynote the other day. And we will be able to take advantage of a lot of these improvements. So we're very excited about that. Some of these improvements you actually get automatically out of the box by simply installing the Silverlight 5 runtime. An example of that is hardware accelerated decoding. So for H.264 videos, it will actually decode that video on the GPU instead of on the CPU. And that makes it possible to give your users a much better experience, higher resolution videos on lower-end computers with less horsepower. So you could run, like the example is a 1080p video on a netbook. So that's a pretty cool feature, and you don't have to recompile your app. We don't have to recompile the player framework. Still compiled for Silverlight 4. All you have to do is enable the GPU acceleration in your app, install the SL5 runtime, and you'll get this feature for free. Another feature, trick play. So we do currently support trick play in smooth streaming. That is the ability to fast forward or rewind your video and watch it while it's happening. But what SL5 will allow us to do is support trick play for progressive videos, and it will also allow us to take advantage of the new audio pitch correction. So while you're playing in fast forward, instead of the audio just cutting out like it does now, you can actually hear the audio, and it won't sound like chipmunks. It'll sound intelligible, so you can actually hear what's going on. This is really good for educational scenarios where you're watching these instructional videos where you need to listen to the words, you need to understand the words, but you want to go through it fast because it may not be the most exciting stuff to watch. Remote control support is another thing that is coming in SL5 that is not currently in the SL5 beta bits that are available, but obviously remote control would be a very useful thing for the player framework. So we do intend to support that when it's ready. And then improved power awareness. So when the video is playing, the screensaver will not kick on. And when your video is not playing, your computer will be allowed to go into sleep mode. So all of these features are things that you can expect to see in the future in the player framework, and take advantage of that. All right, so the big news, HTML5. In case you've been living under a rock lately, you probably know that HTML5 supports this new tag. It's called the video tag. So we want to make a version of the player framework that uses that video tag and plays the same kind of great experience that you get with the player framework for Silverlight, but using native HTML5. Our goals here are to expand the reach of our player and to use developers some choices. So we're in the very early stages of this, so unfortunately I don't have any demos or anything to show you, but we are starting this process now, and our goals with this are to create a consistent look and feel between the Silverlight version and the HTML5 version. We also want to create as much parity as makes sense between the APIs, so you as developers don't need to hopefully relearn too many things to use either or. And that's important because we want to be able to support a fallback scenario. So if you're using the HTML5 version of the player framework and your user doesn't have a browser that supports HTML5, we want to be able to fall back to the Silverlight version seamlessly and transparently to both you, the developer, and your user. So making them look the same is pretty key to doing that. And then we want to support something that we're calling fall forward. So there's some features that you're not going to get in HTML5. Silverlight really is sort of the best video experience on the web. And things like DRM will not be supported in HTML5, full screen, smooth streaming. So if you need some of those features, we want to make it easy for you to basically sort of fall forward and use the Silverlight version of the player framework to enable that. And again, we want to make it transparent to you and the users when that happens. So actually, one more thing about HTML5. Yeah, so again, I'm sorry I can't show you a demo about this, but I am excited that we can talk about this, and I want to, have you as the community start giving us feedback, because we are in the early stages. We're looking to find out what exactly you want. Last night, I actually, on our Codeplex page, posted a new discussion topic. Some people have already been interacting and chatting on there. So tell us what you want in the HTML5 version. It's early enough that you can actually drive the direction of this and impact what's happening. So that is our plans for HTML5 and our plans for the future. And I hope you've enjoyed the talk here on the Microsoft Media Platform Player Framework. Hope the name makes a little more sense to you now. Again, go to smf.codeplex to get the source code or the setup. And that URL will change, like I mentioned, but we will redirect to that at some point in the future, so you can just keep going to smf.codeplex for now. And at this juncture, then, I will start answering questions if you have any. And this would also be a good time if you're interested. We have 13 minutes, it looks like, before the next session. And so we have some of this 3D technology up here. We've got both Anaglyph and the NVIDIA Active Shutter. So you can, I'm going to try to do this in parallel. Hopefully it's not too chaotic, but come on up here. I've got some help to show you how to use it. Check it out and enjoy, and feel free to ask questions then. Yes?
Got any plans regarding that? And when can we expect something out of HTML5 in the Silverlight media framework?
Right. So the question is, can you, instead of falling back from HTML to Silverlight, fall back from Silverlight to HTML? And also, when are we going to have an HTML5 version? I don't know the answer to the second question. It's still, like I said, in the early planning stages, so it's tough, and it would be a mistake, an error on my part to try to actually give you a date, even if I had a guess at that. So, but we're actively developing on it, and we're going to try to deliver that as soon as possible. And as far as the fall back from Silverlight, that's something honestly I haven't considered. That's an interesting idea. Okay.
When we say fall back, fall forward, we're thinking of all those scenarios.
Great. So there's your answer. Yes.
When you've got smooth streaming ad injection, I'm wondering if it continues at the bit rate it's detected from smooth stream that's being played, or whether it does the warm-up.
Yeah. So the question is, if you're playing at one bit rate and then an ad starts to play, does that ad play at the same bit rate? Yeah, two smooth streaming ads. Yes, we do actually try to tell it what bit rate to play the smooth streaming ad at to start with. So then, of course, it can adjust after that point. So. Great, thank you. Yes? Oh, yeah, great. I'm glad you asked that because I was going to actually mention that. I'm going to post that on my blog, which I think is on this page here. So it's not up there right now, but I'm, yes, definitely going to post that because it's kind of fun and I'd like to see other people try it out. So,
What hardware would people need to take advantage of the Silver Lake 5 hardware acceleration?
Ooh, that's a good question. There are hardware requirements to support that, and it is H.264 only as well, so VC1 doesn't work. But
okay. Okay. But in terms of backward compatibility back to a machine that's a year old or something like that?
If you basically, if you play back on a machine that doesn't support it, just fall back to CPU decode.
Okay. And how to find out more about which ad, the term agency isn't right, but which of the places you go to have them do the ads into your application? How would a person find out more about those?
like which ad servers will support
term
this?
I'm looking for.
Yeah, a good place to go actually is the IAB website.
Okay.
It's Interactive Advertising Bureau, I believe. But yeah, just Bing or Google IAB. You'll find their website, and they have a bunch of people that support their VAST standards. And I think I've seen like 5 or 6 different ad servers out there that support VAST 2.0 is the latest standard. There was a VAST 1.0 as well, but we support 2.0. That is the latest. And yes, there's a bunch of ad servers that you can find on that website.
And then for finding ad servers who do specialized topics of special interest, same resource to look for those? People interested in dogs or horses or something like that to get a more focused ad server?
Yeah. So the ad servers themselves should be responsible for dealing with the targeting, and they would. The idea would be that they would send you VAST files that are appropriate for your application. The player framework doesn't deal with any of that. We just sort of expect you to sign up with the ad server, you to tell it what it needs to know to serve correct targeted VAST ads, and then we just play those ads regardless of what they are. So.
How do those ads tie in with the Windows Phone 7 ad serving? Is there any tie-in correlation with the categories?
Not.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay.
That is, the Windows Phone 7 ad technology is a separate thing, and our ad features do not work on the Windows Phone 7 version of the player framework. This is the Silverlight for the web and desktop only.
I was thinking more in terms of how Windows Phone 7 has you categorize your ads in terms of the ad servers on it. But okay, thank you.
Right, yeah. You bet. Yes? I'm sorry, I'm having trouble hearing you.
I monitor several videos at the same time.
So are you talking about having different users each running a video, or are you talking about one user running many videos? There's in that tool, there's an ID that tells it which player to connect to. And by default, we have a certain GUID that is hard-coded in the plugin and hard-coded in the tool. But you can go and configure it so you could have multiple players, each having their own ID. And then in that tool, you can type in that same ID, and it will know to connect to the specific player. So, yes. Yeah, so right. So are we going to support offline videos? There is a way to actually feed in a stream for progressive videos. So you smooth stream, right? That's something that came up the other day. I don't think we support that
you interested in playback of ISP files off disk, or?
Off of this. So okay, actually, you use your player, and it doesn't have offline capability.
Yeah,
Especially
it's
for
something that
Windows.
we're looking at.
Yeah.
Future versions. Both, right now, there is a framework called Silhouette Enhanced Release Framework. It supports something similar. It supports caching, local caching of fragments that you can then play back when you're disconnected. But we're definitely looking at supporting just playback of ISP files off this future versions that are playing around.
You already had done this without this, but I heard that you are going to support offline download.
Yeah.
I was wondering if you have any comments on that.
Yeah, come talk to me later. We can talk about it in more detail. We'd love to get some feedback on that.
Great.
What about Silverlight 5?
Yeah. Yeah, so if I think I understood your question correctly, you're wondering, are we going to have to recompile our player framework against Silverlight 5 to support things like the trick play? The answer is yes. And we will, at some point, so Silverlight 5 is still in beta. A lot of those new features aren't available yet, so we need to wait for that, for Silverlight 5 to actually catch up and support these things. Then we're going to need to do the work. So our goal is to support that, and we'll have to do it in a native Silverlight 5 version, and that's kind of down the road at some point. So.
And do you have any plans for Windows Phone 7 for such features?
Windows Phone 7 for what?
So you have a smooth streaming player for Windows Phone 7.
Correct.
Are you going to support those on Windows Phone 7 also, or are you just going to backlog it?
Yeah, I would think that as soon as those, if Windows Phone 7 supports Silverlight 5 someday and supports those features, then our version for Windows Phone 7 would also be able to take advantage of that. But until that happens, until trick play and those kind of things are in the runtime that runs on Windows Phone 7, obviously we won't have an option to support that. So, because we rely on the underlying technology to do the work for us. So, yes.
Hi. One question. If you have a production environment running Silverlight 4 with a runtime of Silverlight 4 and it's out there in an official website, and now you want to take advantage of the hardware acceleration, what should we recommend to our customers to install Silverlight 5 runtime beta and use that feature, or we should wait by the end of the year or whatever date?
My personal recommendation would be to wait. It is beta, the Silverlight 5 runtime, that is, we've done some vetting to make sure that things work fine with Silverlight 5 runtime, and things do appear to, but that doesn't mean that there aren't issues. So I would wait until there's sort of more official. The SL5 runtime is more officially released, and we've had time to do our due diligence.
Months, or can we have the hardware acceleration before?
Well, I mean, you can use it. You can use it now, but it's but the burden.
My thing is if you can have a 4.5 or something, or 5.0 or whatever
Well,
you call it.
it wouldn't make any difference, if you don't mind to. This is the challenge with new versions of anything coming out, right, including plugins, that you have the debate between do I want to wait until lots of people install the plugin and then I start taking advantage of its features, or do I want to require it right away?
Yeah, but we are talking about support for Microsoft support systems. And when
Well,
you
so-
use beta versions, they say, it's not yet supported.
So I
It's
wouldn't.
not that yet.
So I would never recommend that you put any beta software into a production environment.
Yeah.
I can't really imagine any scenario where I recommend that. Once Silverlight 5 goes fine, then you can start requiring.
But the question that I'm asking is that if you plan on releasing HTML5 runtime only with hardware acceleration RTM, that is my question. Silverlight 5, I'm sorry.
You're asking when we're going to release it.
No, that's not my question.
No,
Maybe it's my English is not correct.
Is there going to be an interim release that doesn't have other features but does have the hardware acceleration?
Only with that.
Actually, we're about out of time here. The next session is going to start soon, so but I'll be happy to actually talk to you afterwards. So we just need to wrap it up, though.